everyone, I'm Hannah Lloyd.
And I'm Charlotte Gilfillan.
Welcome to our podcast, Women in Wellies.
Each episode, we will be inviting a guest to share their stories, experiences and lessons of working and living in rural Scotland.
We want to get to know the real women behind the Wellies and share them with you, our listeners.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Women in Wellies podcast. Some of you have already guessed who this episode's guest is, but I suspect most of you won't know her incredible background and story. So a very warm welcome to the podcast, Gael Wilkinson. Why don't you kick us off by introducing yourself and telling our listeners more about who you are and what you do?
Good morning. I'm Gael, the beekeeper at Kinbees. I'm based just outside Dunfermline in Fife. And I've been beekeeping now for 5 years. It started off as a hobby when I had a hospitality marketing business, and it has now completely taken off over my life. And it's become a passion. And it's actually not just taken over my life, it's taken over my house, it's taken over my garden, it's taken over my garage. So it's grown a lot of arms and legs, and it's taken me into crazy business avenues that I just never thought existed. So at the moment, I've just come to the end of the beekeeping season for this year. And as someone that finds it really hard to sit still for 2 minutes, I'm already got schemes on the go and thinking about what I'm going to do next year. And I've got this sort of time in the winter to plan everything and make changes and make things happen for them. So it's never a quiet time, but it is a bit of a calmer time for me just now.
And Kinbees produces award-winning honey, is that right?
We do, yes. We're really fortunate to have our hives in just such a lovely location. And we're also really lucky that all of the farms round about us are pesticide-free. And there's a really rich range of forage around here. And it just makes the most beautiful honey.
Gael, I think it's quite clear already how passionate you are about beekeeping and honey, but you had a pretty unconventional route into this, didn't you?
I think if you looked at my CV, you'd probably think I was bonkers. And I started off in the world of live music, working for a concert promoter, alongside some of the biggest bands in the world, doing stadium shows, and then ended up in TV. I worked at Scottish Television, and then somehow I ended up working in IT for a little while, being an IT manager, doing projects, and then went off to live in Spain, ended up in the Middle East, opened up an export-import company there, mostly because someone told me that I couldn't do it. So that's kind of my angle here. Someone said, oh, you're a white woman in the Middle East, you can't do that. So of course I had to do it. And I did it. And then went off to South America and then came back to the UK about 14 years ago and found myself having actually a career gap. Nobody wanted to employ me. And I think they looked at my CV and thought, what on earth is this? This woman's crazy. So I took myself back to university and did, because I've always been in marketing and I've always loved that side of stuff, sort of sales, marketing, branding. Went back, did a degree, and then decided that actually I didn't want to work for anyone else. I just want to work for myself, and set up a marketing and PR company specialising in hospitality. So a lot of people were private homes, rentals, hotels, stuff like that. And it took off, and it was through that I was actually doing some research on the golfing industry in Fife for a private house, and ended up at the house. And I said, oh, you've got honey. I said, I love honey. And they were like, oh, I've got hives, do you want to see them? And I was like, yeah, okay. And then the next thing I knew, I was on this hillside in a bee suit, and they opened up the hive. And when I peered inside, it was like something just clicked. It just washed over me, and I just looked inside and I was absolutely mesmerised. I didn't want him to shut the hive up. I just wanted to know more. So I came home, started Googling, ordered loads of books off of Amazon, and just started reading. And I thought, this is for me. I'm going to get myself a wee beehive. So I got my first beehive, and the first year I just had the one. And I was really lucky enough to get a spot on the farm that's just on the edge of my village. And Colin, the farmer at Orchid Farms, he said, "Oh, how many hives do you think you'd maybe want?" And I said, "Oh, maybe 2. I can't imagine I'd ever have more than 4."
I have to say this because this is what Gary said to me when he first got bees. He said, "Oh, I just have 1 or 2 hives." And then this summer we suddenly got 9, and I'm like, "They're in the garden." I'm like, "What's happening here?" Like nobody ever just has 1 or 2 hives.
On that site, I have 20. And Colin just walks around the corner and he just laughs, and he just goes like, he just holds up 4 fingers and points and goes, 4, and he just laughs and walks away because he gets stung all the time. So he puts up with all the bee nonsense. So yeah, it just went from there. So it was 1, then it was 2, then it was 4, then it was 10, and now we're heading to 50. So it has sort of taken over. And as it took over, and I just realized that that is really what I want to do, and I just love it. And I love being outside. Quite happy working away on my own and piddling about in fields. And I started to downsize the marketing projects that I had in my hospitality business, right down to that I only have 1 client now. And as each project came to an end, I just didn't take on any more. So I've got 1 long-term hotel that I work with that's super local, but other than that, it's just the bees, and I love it.
And Gail, your decision to work for yourself and not work for anybody else ever again, what had prompted that?
I don't know if it was just an age thing and a slight intolerance thing. I think as you get older, you just can't be bothered with other people's crap. I just can't be bothered with it. And even going for interviews, I'd sit there listening to people just talking absolute, what I thought was just nonsense. It was nothing. People, especially in interviews, they ask you so many stupid questions and it's not relevant to the job. And it's like, I don't even want to work for you. I can't do this. I don't want to. Also, working for yourself, it gives you flexibility. And I think especially, like, obviously I'm in my 50s now and kids up doing their own thing. So you have this new freedom when you're not being like mum all the time, when your kids have got their own. So why would I want to then give that freedom away to someone else and have to work set hours in set locations? I just thought, I want that flexibility to do whatever I want when I want, and have a true home life, work life balance. And that was really important to me. And I love working for I'm quite happy. Sometimes the boss is a nightmare, but.
So take us back to when you returned to Fife. At the time, you were a single parent, you were struggling to get a job. I imagine that was pretty worrying time for you.
It was, because I genuinely thought I'd just come back and swan into some fantastic high paid job, because look at my CV, it's brilliant. And then when I really looked at it, I thought, oh God, it's too eclectic. And even though I had so much experience, and certainly in an organizational background, no matter what I've done, it's always been organizational. It's always been sort of project driven. And even what I do now with the bees is you've got to be organized, especially when I've got so many hives and so many sites and I just work myself. Got to keep my head in the game and always plan ahead, or I'm turning up half an hour away and I've not got the right stuff. So it's just like a project. And to me, that kind of methodology, you can apply it to any industry. I applied for jobs that I thought I was actually overqualified for and didn't even get an interview, which, was a bit of a wake-up call. And I was like, why am I not even getting an interview? And I think part of that was when I came back, like you're saying, I was a single parent and my son was still quite young, and I didn't want a really high level management job. I just wanted an ordinary job so that I could have time at home and just, a basic income. And then I realized I was sort of overqualified for that. So people didn't want to employ me in case I went somewhere else or I was after their job. And a couple of companies that didn't give me an interview, I just called them up and I said, why did I not get an interview? I'm more than qualified. And they said, well, yeah, that's the problem. You're more than qualified. Like, well, what am I going to do? So I thought, back to education. So I went back to uni and did a marketing degree. So I had a sort of more up-to-date formal qualification. And then I did, straight after uni, I did some sort of freelance work for other businesses. And I think that's where it came to me that I didn't want to work for other companies. And just for that freedom and working for myself. And a lot of people say, oh, working for yourself, but it's actually harder work working for yourself. You end up actually, in reality, working much longer hours when you work for yourself. Because, oh, you must be lucky. But when you're starting up a business, it isn't 9 to 5. You know, you're still there at 11 o'clock at night, bashing away at your keyboard, answering emails because you've been out doing stuff all day. So it's not easy, but I find it much more rewarding and much more fulfilling that when I'm putting in that level of effort, the benefit comes straight back to me. It's not just going to someone else. Well, I mean, with the bees, it's not cheap. Setting up even as a hobby, it's an expensive hobby to be a beekeeper. You know that, yeah. Certainly since lockdown, the price of everything, I mean, a lot of the basics have trebled in the last 5 years since I started beekeeping. So it's not a cheap hobby. And what I've found is in the last few years, I've really been reinvesting everything I make from the sale of the honey back into the business. So this is me just starting to get to the sort of actually having some sort of profit now. Because everything's gone back in, and that's what you tend to do. Unless you go down sort of like a bank loan route or something, which I didn't want to do. And the other problem with beekeeping specifically is that although it is known as bee farming, once you get to a certain level, it is not classed as farming. So there is no funding anywhere for anything to do with beekeeping in the UK.
Which seems absolutely bonkers when you consider the fundamental role bees play as pollinators, particularly in farming.
I had a meeting with my local MSP, and she couldn't believe that either. So she's like, oh no, I think she didn't believe me. And she's kind of like, no, well, I'll get my little assistant to do some research. And they came back with all this stuff, but there was actually nothing. I mean, I think if you're really young, there's Prince's Trust funding. I think if you're under 25, something like that. But other than that, there's absolutely nothing for bee farming at all. You're sort of on your own. So you have to reinvest if you want to grow. I mean, it's a lot to put in. So it's taken time. So here we are 5 years down, and I feel like as a person on my own, I'm almost reached how many hives I can manage on my own. And when I say to people I've got 40 odd, 50 hives, they go, oh my God, on your own. And this is people that have got 20. But because it's full time, I'm not doing it like after work and at weekends. I do have all week. So yeah, that's why I went down that route.
And how do you sell the honey? What's your customer base?
Local and generally across the UK. I sell, I decided to go solo on that as well and not be relying on shops, predominantly because they take 40%. And I'm just like, no, not doing that. I'm not putting all this much work in and giving someone basically all the profit. So I've got a website. I sell through the website. I've got a mailing list. Over these years, I've built up a really loyal local following for the honey. I think through my social media, I've been really subtly trying to educate people on the benefits of honey, and that's definitely working. So when I put out my little mailing list to everyone locally, it just goes nuts. And I say, right, the honey's ready. You know, when I've done a harvest, honey's ready. It's just bonkers. So I mostly sell direct to the customer. So people know exactly what they're getting. When it says that, when I say it is raw, pure, local honey, that's exactly what it is. I do sell in one shop in town, it's called Abbott House, and it is a not-for-profit. It's a historical building, and they have a shop. And all their profit goes to the upkeep of Dunfermline's oldest building. So I'm quite happy to support that. But other than that, I don't put the honey into shops at all. This is the first year I actually had so much honey that because I've upped the number of hives, that I've done a couple of markets, farmers markets. And that was just great because I take along my viewing hive with the bees in it if it's a nice day. And I end up with a big queue down the street. So the people that were in the stall next to me were like, this is great. I like the sort of personal side of it where I'm able to talk to people that are interested in bees, that are interested in honey. And I think that just creates repeat business, which is just brilliant. And quite a few of my customers have become friends now, and I bump into them when I'm out and about, and they want to know what's going on. Everybody wants to know what's going on with the Dunfermline bees. And it's just sort of gone from there. So mostly doing it myself, and I prefer to do that than just. I know a lot of beekeepers don't want to do that sort of public side of it. I totally get that, and they just want to deal with their bees, put it in the jar, and give it over to a shop. But I didn't want to do that, so I sell from my house, and people just come and click and collect from a little shelf unit in the porch. It's quite basic, but people really like it because they can just sort of rock up and pick up their honey and off they go.
I think one of the most interesting things I found is that we keep bees, we harvested our honey, we taste it, and I'm like, this is delicious. This tastes so different to what is on the supermarket shelf.
There's nothing better than your own honey. Your own honey is always the best.
Obviously. And but then getting that feedback from customers, from like, we just have sold ours basically through Facebook to friends and family, and this year we haven't actually sold any because I haven't done any of the social media posts to say we've got honey available. But the but that feedback from people saying this just tastes so different, that then gets repeat business. Do you find that? Because that for me is what inspires me to be like, yeah, okay, let's keep keeping bees, let's keep harvesting this honey, even though I get stung in the head and like it really hurts and like, you know.
And I think that when someone says to me, "Oh, I don't like honey," I always say that's because you've not tasted real honey. You've gone for supermarket honey, which is a completely different beast altogether. It's not the same. I mean, honey is, I think after milk and olive oil, is the third most faked food product globally. It's a massive $1 billion fakery business that goes on around the world. Things like Manuka. I mean, there's so many, I think there's 5 times more Manuka honey sold than there is produced in New Zealand. It's so easy to fake because of the testing. The testing is really basic to prove that it's real honey. So if you say this is Manuka honey, or I don't want to just say Manuka honey because that's a shame for the real Manuka honey producers. But if you say, oh, this is clover honey, all they do is test. If it is ever tested, they're just looking for clover pollen, micrograins of pollen. You can just put some pollen in some syrup. It'll pass the test. So the testing's really basic. This is what a lot of honey producers are trying to change, is to up that. The other problem with supermarket honey is if you're buying raw honey, it's never going to be adulterated. It's not going to be watered down with syrup. And it's also normally not heat treated if you're buying direct from a beekeeper or at a farmer's market. And one of the big benefits of honey is all the live natural enzymes that's in it. And if you're buying off the supermarket shelf, it's not going to have that. There's definitely been a thing over the decades where the bigger companies have tried to do this sort of marketing thing where you need to have your honey runny and it's got to be all clear and all the same. Actually, honey crystallization is a completely natural process. And they've tried to make it as if that's it, it's gone off. And that's just not true. You just sit it in a bowl of tap hot water, it'll go back to runny. So they heat treat it to keep it runny as long as possible on the shelf. The other thing is if you have any allergies, like if you've got hay fever in the spring, there's absolutely no point in you buying honey off a supermarket shelf. Because one, if you look on the label, it's going to have a blend of EU and non-EU, which means it could be from God knows anywhere on the planet. You don't know what it is. You don't know where it's from. And the way honey works when you've got, just say, hay fever, is the little micrograins of pollen act like a kind of vaccine. So you're getting a little dose of it. And that's supposedly, I should say, going to help the hay fever. And I have a lot of people that are champing at the bit in the spring going, is the honey ready? Is the honey ready? Because you really want it as local as possible, because there's no point in you taking honey that comes from China, because it's not going to have the micropollens in it that you have on your doorstep. So I always say, buy as local as you can. And if you don't think you've got a beekeeper, get on Google, because you'll be surprised to find that you've probably got loads, and they're because we're everywhere. We're all, everywhere as a beekeeper. I would recommend in 6 miles, So go local if you want for allergies.
I think it's yeah, it's amazing. I notice when I eat our honey over the spring, my hay fever is definitely a million times better.
I like it because honey's a humectant. It attracts water. The honey has to be like under 18.5% water to be honey, because anything above that, it can ferment, which is why honey never goes off. It just crystallizes because nothing can grow in honey, which is, I suppose, why now they're using it for medicinal purposes, for wound healing, because bacteria can't get through. It's an amazing substance. I've got like my mum and a lot of our friends on it, because when you take it daily, it does seem to help your skin, the moisture retention in your skin. And I think definitely as you get older, you do get drier skin when you hit the menopause and stuff. So I found it great for that. Plus, it just tastes great in your porridge and on anything, I think. With a bit of cheese and an oat cake, that's my favourite. This year I wanted to try and do some comb honey, but it was such a poor summer, and I had loads of people desperate for it. Because in the spring I was like, I'm going to do comb honey, and everyone's like, yeah, and had a big waiting list, and then ended up with none. Just because it was such a terrible summer. We had a great spring. Anyone that's in farming will know that it was just awful. But for the bees, it was terrible, because we had an okay June, then with such a bad wet July that the bees ate everything that they'd collected in June. So when we got towards the end of July, there was nothing. And I was like, oh my God, this could be a complete dud harvest. And we got 3 weeks of decent weather. So even for myself, I only ended up with about 30% of the harvest I was hoping for. I only had those 3 weeks.
Yeah, ours was low for the spring. Gail, do you still find it, you said at the beginning you found it the first time you opened a hive absolutely mesmerising. Do you still find it mesmerising when you open a hive and pull out a frame of bees?
Every time I open a hive, my heart does a little dance. Every single hive, and still. And even if I'm there all day and I'm doing 20, 30 hives in a day, every hive. Because the thing with bees is when you open up the hive, you genuinely never really know what's going to happen. Sometimes you can open up a hive and they're just lovely and everything's perfect, and you go, that was great. And then other times you can open up the hive and they come at you like a cloud of miniature devils, and you end up going, oh, fuck on that, and closing the lid quickly and running away. So sometimes it can be really crabby. So you just never know what you're going to put. Sometimes you think, oh, this is going to be a breeze, and it ends up that there's no queen, and there's a drama, or they're just about to swarm. You just don't know what's in there, and I love that.
But you're allergic to bee stings, aren't you?
I am, yes.
How do you manage that?
I no matter how hot it is, I wear very thick jogging bottoms and a thick sweatshirt under my bee suit. I've got a really good quality bee suit. I double glove, and I am super careful about making sure all my zips are closed, and I'm tucked into my wellies. And that is mostly because I've learned the hard way. And I have had a couple of brilliant stings. In fact, I think the best one it was actually during lockdown. And one of the good things about bees is they are, even though it's not farming, they are classed as livestock. It's a bit upside down. So during lockdown, I was able to wander off and still do all the bees. So I was at the bees, and someone had phoned. I was just leaving. Someone had phoned, and I'd unzipped the hood, answered the phone, and I bent down to pick something up off the ground that I dropped, and a bee just flew up off the grass and got me right in the throat. And I was like, oh, this isn't good, because I do really swell up. I'm not anaphylactic. I didn't think I was anaphylactic, but I did feel quite ill and really swell up for like 3 or 4 days. So I thought, oh, that's not good because it's on my throat. And I had the car with me. I thought, I'll jump in, and I'm only like half a mile into the village. And we have in our village a post office and chemist combined. So I had jumped in the car, and as I'm in the car, I think everything's starting to spin, and I'm thinking, oh, this isn't good. So I drove down, and luckily there's no cars on the road, it's locked down. So I drive down at the village, and by the time I get down to the chemist, everything's starting to spin. So I just stopped the car in the middle of the road, got out, left the keys in it, ran in, and there's a queue of people all standing in their masks at the door, and I just brushed past them all, run in, run up to the counter, and I was like, I've been stung on the throat by a bee. I think I'm anaphylactic. And the guy looked at me, and then a projectile vomited right down his front. And it gets worse. So I then, he's staring at me, I'm staring at him. I fainted on the floor in front of everyone, peed myself, and was just lying there retching on the floor. And I was like, what did I miss? They're like, we're not phoning an ambulance. We can't phone an ambulance. You don't want to go in the hospital right now. Everybody's got COVID. So they actually grabbed me by the ankles and pulled me into the little room, going for consultations. And I lay there for about 15 minutes thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then my son came to get me, because he came around the corner. I was like, why is your car running? And so I went home, went to sleep for 2 hours, and woke up, and I was fine. And then I had to go round with jars of honey and apologise for the mess.
The whole time that all this is going on, are you still in your suit?
Yeah, I'm still in a bee suit with my wellies on, no mask on. So I wasn't expecting a mask. And then for the next year after that, every time I went into the post office, the guy used to hide through the back. And as if nobody wanted to send me, like, oh, please tell me she's just sent it by stamps. You know, she's. So now what I do now is, since then, I take a daily antihistamine before I go to the bees, just so that I've got something in my system, and that makes a massive difference. I've found that when I do get a sting, they're not that bad. I still get a bit of swelling, and I can still feel a bit crap for a couple of hours, but it's not as bad. And I find that over the season, at the start of the season, if I get a sting, it's a sore one, but by now, if I get something, it's hardly anything. And then I think that's where I'm lucky, is some beekeepers it gets worse and it does go to anaphylactic level, and that would just really require a rethink. So when that happened before, I was panicking a bit, thinking, what way is this going? I didn't tell my husband, because he'd have been, right, that's it. I was like, I'm not telling anyone. Told everyone now, but I didn't tell. I'd really kept that one quiet, because I'm not, everybody's going to go, you are absolutely bonkers. So I kept it quiet, but I found that over the last few years, the reactions got less and less, as opposed to more and more. So I'm quite lucky that way. And because I was panicking a bit that it would need a rethink. And then I was like, I'd be devastated if, there's just no way you can beekeep anymore.
Gail, it's quite interesting hearing you say there that you wear like really thick joggers, thick jumper under your bee suit, because it's physically quite demanding. You know, a hive can be pretty heavy. How do you find that kind of like physical element to beekeeping? Because I think people just think, oh, look, the bees they're quite wee, they're quite cute, but like, a hive full of honey is heavy, yeah.
Yeah, a beekeeper's back is a real thing. I think you just get your own little system. I kind of have a spare sort of single hive stand that when I'm lifting boxes or manipulating hives, I sit it there. So rather than put things down on the ground, so I'm not having to lift everything right up and down. Although when it is honey harvest, sometimes I do need to get someone in to help me, because if you've got, these can weigh like 20 kilos, some of these boxes, and if it's sometimes they're piled up higher than I am, and they've got bees in them, so trying to get up there is a laugh, because I think I never thought I'd be beekeeping on a ladder, beekeeping on, I've got steps because I'm only 5'2". So, but yeah, it is heavy, and I just think it's a bit of a workout, because I hate the gym. So it's a way of just sort of keeping fit. What I try and do though is on all my beekeeping sites, I try and have vehicle access really quite close, so I'm not having to cart stuff too far. But I find that if I do have to move stuff and I can't get the car in, a wheelbarrow works. So I just use a wheelbarrow and try and move stuff around. But yeah, it's heavy, but I don't mind it. But in the summer, it can be really hot.
Yeah, I know. I have a bee suit. I feel like as soon as you put it on, it's hot. You're like, nope, too much.
Yeah, and of course the thing with bees is you always have them in a nice sunny spot. So even though everybody else is sunbathing, you're in a sort of sweatsuit sometimes. It feels like, and when you take your wellies off, everything's like soaking. But I don't mind it. I sometimes sort of forget. I find beekeeping really mindful. That's one of the things I love about it. When I'm in the apiary on my own, I'm not talking. Um, I don't have any like music or earphones in or anything like that because I actually listen to the bees. And I find you can tell a lot with the minute you lift the lid off the hive, the initial noise that you get from the bees, you can tell their kind of temperament on that day. And I love the buzz of the bees, especially on when there's a flow on and there's loads of bees in the air. They just create this really contented hum. And it's something that at the moment and this winter I'm looking into more because I know there's some studies ongoing at the moment about the frequency of the bee buzz and the physical um, impact that it has on the brain and how it can calm the brain. And I'm really fascinated by that because it definitely does for me. And when I'm in the apiary, I can go there in a full mood, like I've had a parking ticket or something, I get out there within half an hour, everything is right with the world. Because I think as well, when you're beekeeping, you can't think about anything else. You've got to concentrate. Once you open up the hive, 100% of your brain focus is on, because you don't want to be in there too long. You want to open it up, do what you've got to do, and then close it down for the bees' sake. So you're not thinking about anything else. And I now never, since the answering the phone incident, I never take my phone in. I never answer the phone. In fact, I leave it sitting on the other side of the yard on silent. And I just find it really mindful. So you're not thinking about anything else, you're not worried about anything else. And there's something about working with the bees, it's really calming. And sometimes I can just sit down when I'm finished. I'll just sit down and just watch. And there's just nothing nicer than just watching the bees come and go. And when I put things on my social media and comments along those lines, a lot of people say, oh, they just love sitting in their garden. And when they see bees on a certain plant in the garden, they could just sit, you can waste hours, idle away hours just watching them coming and going. And that is one of the other interesting things about beekeeping is you don't even have to open the hive to really see what's going on. A lot of beekeeping is just listening and looking, and you can look at the door, see what's going on at the entrance with the bees coming and going. You can tell a lot about what's going on inside without even opening it. And things about bees that I love. I love when I'm in the apiary and all of a sudden there's a really loud buzz and you go, oh, what's that? And suddenly there's bees everywhere. And then you realize it's because it's about to rain. I can see a shower of rain coming up the Ford Valley, and all the bees know. They feel, they can sense the change in the air pressure, and they all come back to the hive for safety. And just little things like that. Just when that happens, my day is made. I'm skipping. I just love seeing it. I want to shout and tell people, did you see that? But it's just me that's there, and I just love those moments.
Do you know one of the most spectacular things I think, and you never want this to happen as a beekeeper because your aim is to keep bees, but is a swarm. If you see that in the sky, like fills, we had a swarm trap at my mum and dad's in Edinburgh, and my dad was messaging us and he's saying, oh, I think there's some activity, there'll be one or two bees just checking it out. And then we were like, no, Dad, you'll really know when the swarm arrives. And then we got this video and the sky's like full of bees. And Dad was like, it's an amazing spectacle. And it really is. But I think that, the noise of that, we've had a couple, unfortunately, of our hives where beekeeping has become bee swarming and you're like not ideal. But watching them swarm is just incredible as the sky's just like filled and you're like, yeah, and the noise is incredible.
I loved it. I had that this year. I heard the noise behind me and I knew what it was. I was working that hive and I heard it. I went, oh, and hadn't got to that hive yet. And I went, that's not good. And I turned around and they were taking the sky. And I kind of stood there in a sort of Jesus pose. It was just amazing watching that. And luckily they just went into the oak tree on the edge of the yard and I was able to get them back. But I have had them before that have swarmed and I've watched them and I've just watched them disappear over the barn roof when they've gone. But this year I did collect a lot of swarms. I had so many calls, it was crazy. And in one of the sort of formal gardens for one of the mansion house near here, I was collecting a swarm of bees and another one arrived. Not my bees, luckily, because they came from another direction. And then I thought, right, I've got another box in the car. So I went and got that. And as I'm waiting for the stragglers to get in, another one arrived. We couldn't believe it. I was like, this is So I ended up getting 5 or 6 in one day. It was bonkers. I couldn't get any work done for a phone going. It was crazy. This year is nuts. So, as they say, one beekeeper's loss is another one's gain.
I was going to say, have you collected any hives from really really obscure locations, or
The Kingsgate Shopping Centre in Dunfermline,
inside or outside?
outside. The Seven Kings pub in Dunfermline, they were on the back wall after they'd gone through the City Hotel beer garden. Um, so yeah, a castle. I did a castle this year. So I got there and that was really cool. And they had gone into, luckily it had a big turret and it was really high up. Beautiful view up there. But luckily they were accessible from on a flat roof turret with a door. Because I was like, I could see them. I was like, I'm not going up there. There's just no way I'm going up a ladder. It was like huge, big, tall. And then those bees, which is great, those bees are the people that own the castle asked me to just put them in a hive and keep the hive there and manage it for them. So they're still at the castle. They're now known as the castle bees. And I just manage them. So that's another thing that part of my business that's really grown this year is installing and managing hives for companies and other people. And that's been great.
That's fab. And do you do any like collaborations with other food producers or that kind of thing to kind of get honey in other products to kind of broaden your market?
I don't know if you know Chloe from Chocolatia.
I have heard of Chocolatia, but I don't know Chloe.
She's great. And I mean, she wiped the floor at this year's Great Taste Awards. She did amazingly well. I think she got something like 7 3-stars. I mean, off the hook. Amazing. So she used Kin Honey. She does a little Christmas batch of proper chocolate covered honeycomb made with real honey. And she does a little special batch for Christmas, and she used Kinney honey last year, and she's going to be using it again this year. So she's the only person, and we were talking about maybe putting honey inside a chocolate or something. But because of her amazing achievements this year, she's very, very busy. I think immediately after the results came out, she had people like Harrods and Fortnum and Masons and stuff on. So she's just got all these plans ongoing and is super busy. But we're going to be doing the honeycomb for Christmas.
I know I'm probably not the only one who's sat there either listening or probably even recording, because Charlotte's probably the same as me. But do you just buy direct from Chloe if we want to try that honeycomb?
On her website, she's got the most adorable Halloween chocolates at the moment. They look like little ghosties and eyeballs, and they're really cute. Her stuff's amazing. She's really clever, and just young. I think Chloe's still in her 20s. Her business is going from strength to strength. She's doing great. It's lovely to work with her.
So I'll be off onto her website.
I've already got my pre-order in. She's not even made
it. And you're going to have to like put it away somewhere so that you can
I hide it. I hide stuff like that, or everybody in this house eats it. So I have to hide it behind books. I'll hide it in the ironing cupboard. No one somehow ever looks there.
And speaking of businesses going from strength to strength, what's next for you?
I have mostly on the hive management side for me. So that I've got quite a few things bubbling. I've actually got meetings next week. And I'm quite superstitious, so I don't want to say exactly who they're with. So I don't want to jinx them, but hopefully both those projects will come off. And also I did a talk, beekeeping talk as part of Dunfermline's Outwith Festival. And someone approached me about doing, they're a wildlife cinematographer, and they were really interested in doing something, a documentary next year. So we might do something about the whole mindfulness in the apiary. So we're going to chat about that over the winter and do some planning for next summer. So I'm really excited about that. That could be really good. But at the moment, I'm really hoping these other sort of business collaborations come off, because I really enjoy that. I work quite closely with a company called GAC UK. They're a big global shipping company. It's funny how things go round, because I used to use their company when I lived in Oman, and I had the furniture business, and I used to use them for all my international shipping. And now they sponsor my beehives at the Wildflower Meadow at the Hive. So I've ended up working with them again. And it's I've just found it interesting how they use the bees in their internal company communications and training, because it's all about hive mentality and working together, and they use all the sort of parallels of the hive in their communications. So it's been great working with them, and they've been a huge support. JC, they've got a base at Grangemouth at the terminal there. So those sort of business sides, and working with other businesses and hive sponsorship has just been brilliant, because you just meet so many people from different backgrounds and different places. I really enjoy that, and having that sort of common interest in our sort of rural environment and bees. Because I've met people that are scared of bees, but I've never met anyone that hates bees. So
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you said at the beginning that you went out on your own because, for lots of reasons, but one being that you don't like other people's dealing with other people's crap. But actually that through your business you're collaborating with a lot of people across all different walks of life, but it's kind of on your terms.
absolutely, it's all on my terms, and I can say no. And I do say no. I have had people come want to do stuff. I'm thinking about doing this, the bees, and I'm going, not sure I want to do that. And it's brilliant being able to have the freedom to say, no, I'm not going to do that project, or I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do that. But to be honest, I rarely say no. I'm a really yes person.
Welcome to the crew.
People come up with wacky ideas. I go, yeah, that's brilliant. Let's do that. So yeah, I do put thought into it. I really say no, but when I say no, it's not it is no. That I won't change my mind. That's it. And I love having the freedom to do that. Like you say, working for yourselves gives you that freedom to choose. And I know that when you start up a business, because this isn't obviously the first business that I've started up, at the beginning, when you're building your business, you do end up saying yes to everything, and you can get yourself down avenues you don't want to go down. And I think that just comes with experience, that just sit back, don't always say yes straight away, but think, where is this going to take me? Is it worth the effort? Is to think about that when you're setting up a business. And sometimes a little bit less can be more, so you can concentrate on the bits that you do love. And I have found that with the bees, in that if I genuinely took on every project that came my way, I'd have no time to actually beekeep. And that is the bit that I love. I mean, one of the things I did, I started in lockdown making candles with my beeswax, and I really enjoyed that. And it started to get bigger and bigger. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm not actually a candle company. I don't want to just be at home all the time because I'm getting all these orders in. So I just shut that side down. I still make a few, but it's not what my business is. And it's just having the confidence and the sort of single-mindedness in what you're looking to achieve in your small business, to not spread yourself too thin, especially if you're just one person.
Yeah. What do you do with your wax?
I make soap with it, I make melts with it, and I do candles with it. Mostly it sort of ticks along through the summer when I'm busy, but now I'm beefing it up, obviously, for Christmas and doing gift boxes and stuff. So I make things like, I'm looking around at what's all there, like hand balm, I do dog paw balm, and I try and use up the beeswax that I have. Around it. I quite like, that's one of my little things. I quite enjoy cleaning beeswax. A lot of people moan about it, but there's something really satisfying of starting off with this big sort of basin full of gunk, and then at the end of it, you've got this beautiful, amazing smelling, bright yellow wax.
I'm going to come in with a technical question that Gary asked me to ask you. How often do you replace your queens? Because I know that some commercial beekeepers keep them just for a year and then they change them out. Others, like probably more hobby beekeepers like us, kind of keep them until they stop laying or they swarm and they leave. Or so what's your kind of process, or do you just kind of go hive by hive?
I don't replace based on age. I am absolutely awful at killing. I just can't do it. I can't kill a queen. And because I started off naming them, I don't name them all now. I still have some with names. especially Arcot, my sort of main apiary. And to start with, they were all named after dream dinner guests. So there was Carrie Bradshaw, Michelle Obama, Marilyn Monroe, Amy
I
Winehouse.
love this.
Amy
I'm so
Winehouse.
here for this.
So, Carrie Bradshaw was my first, even though my husband said that's not a real person. I was like, she's real to me. And if they swarm or if they die, that's, that's nature. But when I have had a really nasty queen, so basically the temperament of the hive comes from the queen, and for some reason they can sometimes be really aggressive, and I can't have that, especially at my main. Well, I don't want it for myself, obviously, because then you're much more likely to get stung. But at the farm, there's people working there, there's people with horses that come in, there's kids, so I really can't have it, and I have to requeen. So what I normally do is I just take the queen out and I set her free in the grass. I put out, and I go, I'm really sorry. And then I feel bad for days. And I think, well, that's the circle of life, because, something like a bird will eat that or something, but I can't. I think the commercial way is just to snip it between your fingers, and that's just never going to happen. I thought, well, until you can do that, you're not a proper beekeeper. And in that case, I'm just never going to be a proper beekeeper. John, my mentor, who I got my very first bees from, when he helped me install my very first hive, and I was so excited. I said, "Oh my God, I'm a beekeeper!" And he said, "Gail, no." He said, "Give it 20 to 25 years, you might be a beekeeper." I was like, "Oh, way to go, John! Thanks for that." Straight back down to earth.
Yeah. And do you breed your own queens? Do you breed your own queens? Yeah.
I do. I occasionally buy them in if I'm in a panic and something happens and I need to get them quickly, and I need a bit of next day delivery. My postie loves me.
The postie's reaction to an envelope that says this contains live bees. And it
So yeah, I do buy them in sometimes, but I tend to just do splits and make my own, not in a sort of 10 at a time, just individually. But if I'm doing colonies for someone else that's looking to buy bees, and I will occasionally buy them in.
I think that will forever be one of my favourites. When one of the first times when we'd moved here and the postman came to the door with an envelope that's buzzing that says on it, "Warning, this contains live bees." And he's like, you answer the door and he's like, "Is that really what I think it is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's not a prank. Like, this really is. You can just post them like Royal Mail, first class, through they come."
I also have my original mentor, John, that I mentioned. He does breed queens, so he's usually my first go-to, and he just puts them under the doormat for me and sends me. There's a bee under the doormat. Don't stand on it. People imagine a bee, but they are in a little cage. I should say that. It's not a bee under the doormat. It's in a little plastic cage with a bit of food. I think in the States they post they post a nuke.
Oh, really?
In those green Corex boxes, they send them out with the queen in a cage, and you can buy them in the post, like a whole colony of bees. I don't think they do that here. I've not heard of that here.
No.
Most places you collect, but I think there are other places that will send the whole nuke in the post, because they're bees don't care what way up they are. I mean, as long as they're not being shaken, they don't. They can stand upside down. They don't. But yeah, the posties are like, or other times when I'm in a hurry and I need to find them and I'm driving around the village looking for the van, I'm like, there's some bees in that sack in the back of your van.
I mean, I think probably fair to say that Hannah and I have both taken a huge amount from that. I feel like I know more about beekeeping than I ever thought was possible. So that was brilliant. Thank you so much. But the question that we ask all our guests at the end of each episode is, what advice would you give to the next generation of rural women in Scotland?
I think that I've always thought that, there's always been this box. When I was in business, sort of back in the 90s, I was always thinking, think outside the box. You've got to think outside the box. And I always think, don't think outside the box. Think what you could do differently with the box. And in Scotland and in our rural settings, we have so much heritage. And I'm always a big believer in not reinvent. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just make it unique. Do your thing and your own take on it. And I think if you can do that, then you're already onto a winner, because people really do adore our Scottish heritage, especially in our rural environment. And there's a lot there that you can draw from. There's always experience you can draw from. But it's about doing something new that really floats your own boat and interests you and is going to fulfill you. And I definitely think younger generations are so much more confident. I find younger women are so much more confident than myself and my peers ever were in our 20s and 30s. And that's a great thing. And I do see younger women now, so many of them, striding out on their own, not giving it a second thought. And that's just so heartwarming to see. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. But now I see people my own age, in my own situation, you know, kids leaving home and starting up businesses and really going for it. And that's great. And I think there's nothing wrong with working with other people and together and in companies. But if you want to do something on your own, I think it's just brilliant that people just can go and do it.
I do think, though, that one of the reasons the next generation of women have so many more opportunities now and feel so much more empowered now is because the previous generation have fought so hard to really kind of blaze a trail and continue to do so now. And you're a great example of that.
I think a lot of the younger women now, I am their age of their mothers. So it's their mothers that have gone through business, working for other people, working for awful bosses. And I think younger women now have been brought up being told, you know, you can. Whereas when I was at school, I remember saying, you know, it's all what do you want to be in careers and stuff. And I can't even remember exactly what I said. I think I said I wanted to work in medicine, and they said, have you thought about being a secretary? That was the career advice. What you really should do is a typing course. And I was like, I don't really want to work in an office. But the first job I ever had ended up working in our office, you know, because that's just what you did. Whereas now, I think girls come out of school and it's like, what are you going to do? And they might not know exactly, but they're just going to go off and do whatever makes them happy as opposed to what they think they should be doing. And that's just amazing. And I've always said to our boys, you know, you can do anything. You can do absolutely anything. But just remember, you can't do everything. And in the 90s, there was this big thing of, especially as a woman, there was this whole thing about the super woman and the power woman, where she had this brilliant job and 5 kids and this brilliant marriage and this beautiful house. And it was all complete bullshit. You know, it's just, you cannot do that. So you just have to choose the bits that you want. No one can do everything. You can't be a brilliant mother to 5 kids and be really hands-on and then work 90 hours a week. You know, it just doesn't gel. So choose what you want to do and go for it, I think. But you can do anything. You can do anything you want. And I just think that's absolutely brilliant that girls and young women actually genuinely believe that. People said it in the 80s and 90s, but it wasn't real. Whereas now it actually is real.
So thanks so much, Gail, for joining us today and sharing your stories, experiences and lessons.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a blast.
If you want to connect with Gail and Kinbees on social media, you'll find all the details in the show notes. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Instagram at Women in Wellies Podcast to stay up to date with all the latest news.
And you can email us with any questions on womeninwelliespodcast@gmail.com, and we'd love it if you could leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Until next time.